Feel free to return to our channel at any time. The curtain of secrecy has been pulled back today. Mike Oldfield has spoken out about Carl Palmer, shaking up the music industry with his devastating accusations. Palmer has been admired for many years as a drum guru, the force behind Emerson, Lake, and Palmer, Asia, and Arthur Brown's wild universe. But there's a darker truth lurking beneath the virtuoso performances and legendary records. A complex portrait of the guy behind the drum kit is revealed via his feuds, betrayals, and personal hardships. During the early 1918s, Mike Oldfield, who was riding high on the success of Tubular Bells, decided to draw Palmer into his creative orbit. At first glance, the pairing of these two musical geniuses appeared to be a natural fit. The partnership, however, was a total bust when no one was looking. Oldfield and Palmer's strong personalities clashed because of Oldfield's rigors and sometimes obsessive attention to detail. Even from someone as exact as Oldfield, the domineering drummer Palmer wasn't one to follow instructions. Conflicts escalated while sessions were being recorded. Palmer was out as domineering, uninterested in listening, and too engrossed in his own legend to function as a team player in Oldfield's view, as creative differences escalated into open confrontations. What began as an exciting partnership deteriorated into animosity and resentment as the circumstances became intolerable. Palmer had a tumultuous early career that continued well into his split with Oldfield. The late 1916s were an exciting moment for him as he immersed himself in Arthur Brown's bizarre world, one that is sure to be dramatic, full of fire, and doomed to disaster. Arthur Brown was a demanding bandleader who was famous for his extreme theatrical antics, which included physically lighting his head on fire. Young and driven, Palmer soon found himself at conflict with Brown's unpredictable leadership style. The band was unable to stay together due to challenges such as continuous touring, financial mismanagement, and health problems. The disorder and uncertainty were Palmer's worst nightmares. Command and accuracy were his desires. In contrast, chaos was Brown's sweet spot. After a while, Palmer had enough of the relationship's decline. Insiders knew the truth, but he fled claiming communication problems. Subservient to Brown's ego was something he couldn't tolerate. Although this was his first significant feud, it was far from his last. In 1969, after escaping Arthur Brown's insanity, Palmer and keyboardist Vincent Crane co-founded Atomic Rooster. Palmer appeared to have finally found his niche for an instant, but he was never very good at maintaining peace. Palmer had a hard time working with Crane because he was a disturbed genius who suffered serious depression. Everything was very unpredictable. Because of Palmer's incessant ambition and Crane's emotional instability, violent conflicts escalated frequently, and the need to maintain creative control became too great. Palmer, who was always looking for the next big thing, left after only one record. There was no way Crane could ever forgive him. Some others thought Palmer betrayed his friends by leaving them while they were down and out. For others, it was yet another proof of his utter failure to forge lasting alliances. The pattern was starting to emerge, though. Bands weren't Palmer's only exit strategy. Resentment and anger followed him. Carl Palmer had a reputation for being a challenging bandmate before he ever joined Emerson, Lake, and Palmer with Keith Emerson and Greg Lake. The ego clashes that would characterize Yelp's tumultuous career, however, were beyond his comprehension. There was an explosive trio right from the outset. Because he was so dedicated to finding new frontiers in keyboard technology, Emerson was a perfectionist. With an emphasis on melody rather than flourish, Lake was the expressive composer. Palmer, on the other hand, was technically gifted but stubborn and unyielding. Even while the band's early albums and live performances were pioneering, things weren't always that way behind the scenes. Musical direction, money, and stage productions were all points of contention. Palmer wished he had complete artistic control over the percussion parts, but Emerson's ostentatious performance took the stage. Frustrated by Palmer's continuous demands, Lake, who was trapped in the midst, eventually snapped. In the late 1917s, the band had fallen into disarray. Their ornate, classically inspired look became obsolete when punk rock came into prominence. Additionally, their tensions were intensified by the effort to maintain relevance. In between acts, they hardly exchanged words. The band's 1979 breakup wasn't merely an artistic decision. It was a collapse in emotional regulation. And the worst thing? They made multiple attempts to reconcile, but the wounds were never completely healed. Palmer was the most emotionally detached and unreachable, according to Emerson and Lake. After Lake's and Emerson's untimely deaths, many pondered whether the two had ever put their differences to rest. Even more disastrous than Yelpy was Palmer's subsequent high-profile venture, Asia. With their 1982 first album, the supergroup, which included John Wetton, Steve Howe, and Jeff Downs, enjoyed enormous success. Yet, stability was not guaranteed by success. The group was already disbanding by 1983. Palmer, who was never one to put up with incompetence, made his displeasure with Wetton known when the latter's drinking and unpredictable behavior became problematic. Many thought Palmer was instrumental in Wetton's dismissal from the band. However, retribution was swift. Steve Howe, another original member, resigned the following year, saying he and Palmer and Downs had irreconcilable differences. The enchantment had faded, but Asia persisted in other guises. Just as before, Palmer was involved in a revolutionary project, but this time, the internal strife caused it to fail. Imagine this. An energetic man stands behind a complex drum set, his hands moving with the deftness of a machine as he strikes cymbals and toms. Although the crowd roars, Palmer remains oblivious to their cries. He disengages from reality. After the last crash disappears into the night, he is once again by himself, fixated on the rhythm, the beat, and the dogged quest of perfection. This was the life of Carl Palmer, a man whose technical expertise was admired but whose uncompromising standards caused him great anguish. Palmer had an equally, if not more, troubled personal life behind the scenes of his professional disputes. He sacrificed a lot for his music, which was his life center. His life became a never-ending loop of sound checks and hotel rooms due to the constant cycle of recording, rehearsing, and traveling. Bandmates, managers, and lovers came and went, but his work remained consistent. Even though he was a drumming icon in the eyes of his admirers, his closest associates saw a different side to him. He was extremely demanding of himself and everyone around him. A man whose ambition is consuming him. No way to turn it off, no way to balance, no way out. Palmer stayed disciplined, concentrated, and nearly monastic in his devotion, while other rock stars reveled in hedonistic excess. His problems were just as damaging, but there were no controversies around his crazy drug binges or drunken outbursts. Substance abuse wasn't necessary for him to cut ties with people. He was perfectly wicked, and he was equally cruel. He had extremely high expectations for himself and thought everyone else should do the same. Because of those expectations, relationships inevitably failed. The greatest impact was felt by his family. Palmer's obsession with music consumed him to the point that he barely had time for anything else. Palmer was never able to achieve the delicate balance that other musicians had discovered, however imperfectly, between the two realms. He became a legend thanks to his drive, but it wreaked havoc on his emotions. Even though he was metronomic on the drum set, the man's private and public life were out of rhythm. Birthdays were skipped, fights were never settled, and relationships died off. Palmer seemed to have it all from the outside looking in. Glory, achievement, and admiration for one's creative work. But a distinct reality existed in his private life, away from prying eyes. No amount of applause could ever make up for the profound isolation he felt when he wasn't performing. A number of friends departed. His family members battled to mend fences with the man they previously knew, and his lovers were sick of being second fiddle to his drumsticks. Still, Palmer remained steadfast no matter the toll it took on her emotions. As a machine, he was relentless. For it, he was admired by some. Many felt sorry for him. Which came first, self-destructiveness or dedication? Occupation or fervor? Maybe he was as clueless as everyone else. But it was obvious that Carl Palmer wasn't fighting an adversary in the music industry or a rival performer. It went against his nature. And there were no simple triumphs in the struggle. The career of Carl Palmer is paradoxical. Even though he is indisputably one of the best rock drummers of all time, his career is rife with strained relationships. Though he was instrumental in shaping progressive rock, he also left behind a wake of disillusioned bandmates and unresolved conflicts. Now that one thing is crystal evident thanks to Mike Oldfield's revelations, Palmer's previous disputes are once again in the limelight. There is genius and bitterness in his life narrative. Even though his expertise was obvious, he had a terrible track record of keeping personal and professional relationships together over the long haul. Imagine the rhythm of a drum. Effortless, powerful, and unstoppable. Mr. Palmer was that guy. However, even the most expert rhythms have their moments of being too much to handle.